Alrighty, so hello everyone. Um, so let me just reaffirm. Can you hear me? Okay. Well, let's continue on to lesson 3. So today we're going to cover 2 conditional statements. One of them is an if-else, and the other one is a loop. If-else statements. Yes. So this is an if-else statement. Here's a rough drawing of how it works. There is a condition. There's then checks for a statement, and then if it's true, it executes it, and then afterwards it runs the statement, and then afterwards it verifies. So for you to understand perhaps the statement a little better than the brief understanding of it, basically goes through a condition, and based on the condition of and based on the results of the condition, it then passes some statement through. Could you open up the virtual robot simulator? Same as always. Go to the onbot Java code present in text. And then afterwards, delete all the code. Go to the onbot Java. Same thing as all the other classes. And do the Google Docs thing, and then copy and paste the sample code into the simulator. Initialize, run the program, and hit to restop the program. Do tell me in the chat when you have managed to complete it. Oh, great then. Looks like some of you are getting done. Great then. So if you did manage to complete successfully, you should have, let me just give you a quick demonstration of doing it. Go to Virtual Robot Studio Code, go to onbot Java. Else code. And you should see something like this. Pretty standard stuff. So now let's let you so now I want you to experiment a bit. Try changing the values encircled in the red and see what happens. Try to explain why this is based on what you think the code is doing. If you do manage to come up with an explanation or a theory of some sort, share it in chat and we can discuss afterwards. again, when you have managed to go and experiment a bit, do be sure to report what you see in the chat. Maybe create an explanation of some sort, a hypothesis, and don't be afraid to share it out. Yes, good, Eric. Any other hypotheses, or are they roughly the same? If you have managed to experiment a bit, just post in the chat. I think Eric is on the right point. So I'll just sake of pacing. Here's an explanation of how an if statement works. Basically, it runs different sections of code based on varying conditions. For example, if the weather is rainy, we would bring an umbrella, or else if it's not rainy, we would not bring an umbrella, as can be demonstrated by this code. If it is raining outside equates to true, which is it is raining outside, then bring an umbrella. Otherwise, bring some sunglasses. Could you think of any other examples where an if statement might be used in real life? Like I can share out an example for one, outside of the one given in the PowerPoint. Say if there wasn't any, I don't know, soup in your kitchen, you may want to go out and buy some more soup. Just post any example you can come up with in chat. Yes, nice one. Anyone else? Don't be afraid to share. This is a safe space. Perhaps other volunteers than just Eric. Good for you, Eric, for contributing so much. But others? Oh, very well done. So, for what is an if-else statement? Let's go and see. Let's go and test your understanding. So, if 1 is greater than 2, it does telemetry add status, or else it does the telemetry add data, the other one, and then first it updates it. So what do you think this code will update? I mean, well, output will. And why do you think that is? You can speak out loud, you can share it in the chat. But just when you come up with a solution, communicate to the others in some way. So like it will post. You seem to be getting it quite quickly. So it feels like your understanding of this is pretty good. So yes, you are correct. So if 1 is greater than 2, which is obviously not correct, 2 comes after 1, the statement is false, so that it executes its if statement, its else statement both, which then causes it to, as Erica said, it will then create the status of 1 is not greater than 2 and then update that. So then it'll display status, 1 is not greater than 2. So here are the other types of if statements. This is just something you should cover. There is a standard if statement. If something is true, if the condition is true, then it will run whatever code's inside. If there is a condition and then afterwards else, then if its condition is true, then it executes it. Otherwise, it executes something else. And then afterwards, if you want to combine multiple if statements and layer them on top of each other, then you can do if condition 1, else if condition 2, else if condition 3, else. This would basically just be if condition 1 is true, it runs if. Then since it goes down the code, if condition 1 is false and then condition 2 is true, then it runs the second else if, and then condition 3 is if the prior 2 are false. And then it'll run condition 3, and then else is just if everything is false. Here's some additional operators. There's the equal, which means that it's equality. Effectively, if 2 variables are equal, then the result will it'll display the results. Do note when you're using an equality operator and you're assigning it with variable, the variables are comparing their actual object locations, not the names of the variables themselves. Such as if A equal B, it does not compare A, the letter is equal to B, the letter. It compares if the value A represents, which is 10, is equal to B value, which is 15, which is not. There is also the not equal operator, which just returns the opposite of whatever the equality operator does, and is indicated by an exclamation mark. Then afterwards, there's the greater than. So if A is greater than B, which is 10 is not greater than 15, so it's false. If it's less than, if A is less than B, which it is, since 15 is greater than 10. And then there's the greater than or equal to, which is true or false. And then afterwards, there's the less than or equal to, which is, well, I'm sure you've learned equalities by now. So could you think of could you think of some examples where these new types, where these new operators and these new types of if statements might be used, whereas you may not use a regular if statement? Oh, basically, if you have a condition where you normally would use an if statement, where else where you might use an else if statement instead of just an if statement or an if else statement? Like, give an example of when you use a specific one. For example, if you just want something to operate when only one condition is true, like let's just say, I don't know, if you have homework, then you should study, or do the homework, I suppose. Then you would just use an if statement for that. But for example, if you have like an if statement and say like, if you don't have soup, then you may want to buy all the soup ingredients. But if you have like an onion, then you may just want to buy some seasoning and whatever other vegetables you have. And then afterwards, if you just have I don't know, some carrots or something around like that, you may want to buy some other ingredients. And then else, if you just well, I suppose if you just have all of the statements, then just don't really need to buy anything. But like think of an example case where you may want to use like an if-else statement instead of an if statement, or you may want to use an else-if statement instead of just a standard if statement. I hope that clarifies it. Again, don't be afraid to share. This is a safe space. You don't have to be embarrassed if you don't share something. There is no right or wrong. Don't be afraid to share whatever ideas you have. Yes, good example. So does anyone else have anything else to note, or I'll give it another minute if anyone else has come up with anything. Well, I'm sure I'll probably a bit bored. So time for something fun. Here's a challenge. Try to change your program to only have one statement with an if and if else and else if state structure. When you have managed to go and complete the challenge, do be sure to tell me. And also at this point, if I'm moving too fast, then do tell me. And if you don't understand something about an if and if else or if else statement, then do be sure to tell me. Also, to be clear, you don't have to have exactly two else ifs between an if else statement. You can have an infinite number of else ifs, but there can only be one if and there can only be one else in an if else statement. When you finish, tell me. Any questions? Any concerns? Any misunderstandings you may want me to clarify? Feel free to share in the chat. How do I put multiple conditions in the if condition? Yes. Well, good question. So if you want to put multiple conditions in the if statement, let's see here. So okay. So normally you would just put condition. You would normally append them by doing an and statement, but let me show you condition. This is probably a fair bit more advanced than probably condition. Is that how you spell condition? Condition. Alrighty, so if you have a if you want to go and put multiple conditions, well, then what you can do is that you can use the and statement to combine them. What this basically means is that if condition 1 and condition 2 are both equal, then it runs. Otherwise, if one of the two conditions are not equal, then it just doesn't run. Ooh. There is also the other statement, which you'll learn, but this is probably a bit outside the complexity of this. But if you do want to know more fun things you do, there is also an or statement, which operates if only one or the other one is true. And that's done by this double dash thing, or the double line thingamabob. Now, these are logical operators, and well, I hope they help clarify your question. Let me go, perhaps to give you a more in-depth explanation of this. And is basically both of the conditions before and after the and statement. If they equate to true, then they will become true. Then the entire statement equates to true. With an or statement marked by the bottom thing with the two lines, those basically mean if condition 1 or condition 2 is equal or true, then it runs. By the way, this is a fun fact in Java, I suppose. This does have some practical applications, but if condition 1 is false, the code will not check in an and statement. If condition 1 is false, then it will not check for condition 2's trueness. So if condition 1, say, is false, then condition 2 is just not checked for an and statement, because the code knows it's going to be false anyway, since one of the two statements is false. So this way you can create situations where condition 2 may be only true if condition 1 is true. A little bit hard to come off the top of my head. You can keep in mind this. This has some niche uses in computer programming and is quite helpful sometimes. So when you manage to come up with some ideas, some examples, then do be sure to tell me in the chat. Don't be afraid to share now. Don't worry. Don't be afraid to don't feel like you're stressing yourself. Take as much time as you need. Yeah. Mm. Well, what seems to be the problem? Well, would you be fine sharing it? Would you be fine sharing at least a snippet of your code in the chat so that perhaps I may be able to see what may be causing the error? Or is there like an error message that pops up when you can't run it? Well, let's take a look. So, double power. Alright, let's see. So initialize program. Oh, yes, the illegal break statement. Oh. Oh, by the way, I should probably show you that it does say the error up top of the code here, which says emergency stop illegal break statement. Yeah. I'm not entirely sure why it would be. Oh. So, good attempt. I can see a couple of problems in your code. So, I assume what you want is that you're trying to set variable levels of power depending on the runtime, correct? Okay. So, a couple of problems. The first one is that, well, I can see your power statement. I'm going to assume that the second statement in your power statement, which is the first problem, is that basically there are no break statements for on Java. It just doesn't do that for some reason. I'm sorry, I'm not entirely sure why, but although in regular Java you might be using it correctly, just on Java due to the fact it's for robotics, there's special rules governing it. But primarily you won't use a break though. You will just set the power to 0 normally. And probably a couple more pressing problems is that, first of all, your first statement of if get runtime is below or equal to 2. Well, that will always be equal to 2. The second statement, if get runtime is below 2, will never run because the first statement must always be true before the second statement runs, as it will always be below or equal to 2. Otherwise, the second statement probably wouldn't work otherwise, but let's just assume that's a test for you. When you set the power variable in all your statements, it just changes the variable power. It doesn't actually set the it doesn't set the wheel powers, unfortunately. So if you wanted to achieve what you're trying to achieve in the code, normally some improvements would be, instead of doing power equals to 2, you would do things like front right dot set power, front left dot set power. You'd be writing this statement at the end of everything. Like this. And then afterwards, if runtime is over 12, like this. This way, I believe you may be able to achieve your saving the program. I'm not supposed to do that. Then you can maybe be able to see the variable power you want to achieve. Although it kind of runs into a wall. But let's take a look now. The lower you achieve. Your front. If while I just there's also a problem. There's an even bigger problem. So your if statement doesn't quite run that well because of the while statement in front of it. Now you haven't actually learned what a while statement is, but basically what it does is that it just says while something happens, this is just how it is. Let's see here. Bottom maps to this. This maps to this. This maps to this. I believe all you have to do is get rid of the while statement. Oh, I'm sorry, this debugging code takes a while, as it normally does, but it'll get fixed up. Oh, wait, no, I see that as a different program. All right, so a couple things to notice with your code. Basically, just to sum it up, the break statement, don't use that. You want to set the power to a different power every single time in order to change the power setting, instead of just simply saying power equals to a different variable. And let's take a look, see now. So how just see if but aside of that, the majority of your code looks pretty good. Does that help clarify some problems? Yep. I hope this will probably clarify a bit more. There afterwards, the next step is a walkthrough where basically does more, or here you should go to the virtual robot stage. This is the setup for the next activity. So oh yeah, I should probably post this in the chat. But basically, here's the next activity for this. You then should go to after opening a link, you then should go through the Google Documents in order to go to the page and paste the sample code into the simulator. And then for us to see the results, hit initialize and then run, stop and reset. After seeing how the resulting telemetry, the motion telemetry, look through the code and try to understand how it works. So again, I'm just sharing the screen. This is roughly what you should be doing. See what you mean? Hey, loading taking a while. And when you manage to complete these setup instructions, do be sure to tell me. And apparently loading this thing looks like it'll take some time, so don't be afraid to this may take a while. Yeah, I don't blame you. My computer's not faring much better, honestly. I don't know why this is. I don't know why this is what I do. Let me try to open up on Edge and let's see if Edge works. Oh, for some reason, Edge actually works for once. Try opening it up on Edge. The blue Microsoft Edge, the blue greenish thingy-mabobber. Try opening it up on that and see if it works better. Not sure why that's the case, but just is. I guess. I don't know. Oh, I don't know why it would work better. No, okay. I'm supposed to just show you what it's supposed to do. So for those who have it a bit laggy, you just follow along and watch. So basically, I had to open this up on Edge myself. Let me put this in the chat. Microsoft Edge. I had to basically put this in Microsoft Edge because this is well, for some reason it just doesn't work on Chrome. So okay, so let me just copy and paste the statement. You should have arrived at this page. Then after copy and pasting this code in there. This would be quite cool. Let's see here. Okay. And then after you should then initialize the program. Start the program. Start. You should do this correctly. If I'm doing this correctly, should I mean initialize the program, start the program. I'm not sure if I'm doing this correctly. Go look at the see the results, hit initialize, and then run the program. They reset the field. Interesting. The results hit initialize. Oh, it's okay. Wrong with internal. Oh, I suppose you weren't supposed to see anything happening. Internal code sensor. Search. Program. And the program. Something wrong with the parallel column. Oh, okay. Oh, man, the beeping sound you heard is just the sound it makes at the end of the game. Oh, the car sensor is supposed to work. The color sensor, red. Well, let's see here. Hmm. Oh, let's see here. Color sensor. Basically, regarding the technical difficulties there being had, basically what you're supposed to see though is that the robot has a front-mounted color sensor for chasing the code. This is a discrete if statement to read the color of the code and the code sent from the color of the code from the code sensor. And they'll all behave differently depending on different value. And then telemetry fields are saying the operator will change the code's color to let you test different colors. Green conditionals less than 25. Yellow's conditionals are greater than 250, and the green is less than 200. Purple conditions are greater. You're supposed to go through this whole process, and then we go and do a changing challenge. But well, I suppose unfortunately it doesn't quite work. So well, I'll just go skip this process. You're supposed to you're supposed to have a challenge. You're supposed to come up with a solution like this in order to use an if and if else statement. But I suppose due to technology concerns, and just don't worry about it. Did anyone else actually manage to open it up, or is it nobody managed to open it up and it was just being laggy the whole time? Oh, okay. So first of all, let's just recap off here. If you have any questions about how an if statement works, be sure to tell me. Oh, for the sake of pacing, since someone else really seems to be commenting. Here's let's cover loops now. So there are two main types of loops. There are for loops and there are while loops. For loops can let you repeat something a certain number of times without having to rewrite your code 20 times. Like, for example, use a loop for having your robot do the same task by grabbing a block 5 times. While loops, on the other hand, let you repeat something until while a condition is true. So while your color sensor does not see the color red, go forward. This will cause your robot to stop when it detects the color red. So here's an explanation of how a for loop works. So I is the variable. We initialize it to 0. Then afterwards, you can iterate the code. This will then iterate until 5 while I is less than 5. And then afterwards, you can increase the incrementation of it in this last part, but you then do I plus plus. So then afterwards, this is then the body of the loop. Code needs to be repeated 5 times, more code to be repeated. And then, yep, basically, and the body is just basically what code will be repeated every time you print. So here's a challenge, basically. Remember when you had to make a robot square? Well, you had to repeat the same movement where the robot went 4 times. So adjust the code to use a for loop instead. This time we'll go back to the hopefully a little bit less buggy simulator, the ultimate goal one. Same set of instruction, same on.java, and then afterwards, edit your program to complete the challenge. And here's the program you're going to edit. Well, get to it, I suppose. when you've managed to solve the challenge, then share it in the chat. As always, if you have any troubles, if you don't understand how a for loop if you don't understand how a for loop works, then post it in the chat so I can clarify any issues. I think that this is a bit seeing how the current lesson's running a bit over time, so I apologize for that. If you have any questions, just tell me. What do I do when I click the link? Okay, so let me go give you a demonstration. So, but you should copy and paste the program into it. But basically, this is the same thing as you've always done. You just click the virtual robot simulator. These two. You close the virtual robot simulator. You then click programming. You then go move on to the tools. Then slowly loads. After it finishes loading the tools, okay, for some reason, Google Chrome today is just being really stubborn for my computer, so Edge, I guess it is. I'm not really all too excited for Edge. But, oh. How do you do a for loop again? Okay, let me answer one question at a time. Let's good to know that other people are participating. I encourage this. If anyone else would like to also participate, then don't be afraid to do that. Well, what should happen is that you should have just gone to this program link. You should have clicked the on.java. And then after you get the code, you should copy and paste the code from the second link into the, well, what's currently loading right now on my computer. So, oh, looks like that's a bit slow. So while that's taking a while to load, mile and a half, what's going on here? A fair bit more than a while to load. Go back to PowerPoint. All right, so to the recap for you, Darren. So this is a for loop. What it is that it basically follows the structure of for condition, which is an I statement. And this is the number of iterations, and this is the incrementation. So how do I put it in a better way? Because this is something you just have to kind of know. Basically, you set the initial variable you want. This is a variable that will be first initialized in the for loop. This basically sets the variable you want to keep track of during the for loop. Then afterwards, this is the condition statement. What this condition does is that, and then it keeps on running the code until I is below 5, until I is over 5, in which case it equates to false, and then the thing stops running. And then afterwards, you can then increment it by 1. Normally, you would use a for loop, but I suppose a for loop will make more sense in the context of a while loop. So let me jump ahead the lesson a little bit. So let's see here. So I'll be teaching the while loop more in depth, but all you need to know is that while loop basically is just while a condition is true, it then repeats the code. And that's the summary of how it works, so that it will make that'll make a for loop much more clear. So with the for loop, what it does is that basically it combines a statement where if you want a while loop to repeat several times, normally you would just do while I is below 5, you have to set this you have to initialize this variable above the statement, and then afterwards you would have to then do x plus I plus plus inside the statement. So let me type it out for you. Integer I is equal to 0, while I is beneath 5. Okay, ignore the brackets. The brackets are supposed to contain the I plus plus. I think that through very well. And then after this, we'll do closing bracket. Just ignore the second closing bracket. Just ignore the closing bracket on the while I underneath 5 statement. But this is the equivalent statement in a while loop. A for loop basically just combines this and makes it easier to, it makes it more readable so that it's easier for a person to understand it. This is something you kind of just have to know. Basically, variable, condition, and then afterwards, what happens if the condition is true, and then it should increment. Hopefully, if you've written this correctly, the incrementation will eventually cause the variable to go in and exceed it or not pass the condition after some amount of times of doing this. Otherwise, if, for example, you decreased I every single time, oh yeah, by the way, I don't think you've learned this yet, but plus plus, it basically means plus 1. Plus plus is equal to okay, so this is probably the most one. Okay, plus plus equal to plus 1. Minus minus is equal to minus 1. So these are the shortened version of them. So hopefully your incrementation will eventually increase, because if you did something like I minus minus, as you can imagine, since I keeps on getting smaller and smaller and smaller, it never actually grows above 5. So this will just cause it to repeat infinitely. So hopefully you don't. So hopefully that shouldn't happen in your code. So to basically recap, basically variable, how much it should be iterating by, well, variable, condition, and an iteration. The iteration only runs after the condition is proven true and is run the body of the loop, and then afterward the incrementation will work. I hope that makes sense. Do you have any other further questions, Darren? Or did I hopefully explain that to you well? I understand the concept of a for loop is a bit hard to get your head wrapped around. Oh, okay. I think I got a square. Ah, well, that's good to know. I'll go and let some others wrap up a bit then with their own projects. And I'll go over the solution with you. Again, don't worry about it being perfect. There's no need for that now. Oh, no, you'll need to send your code. Don't worry about that. You probably won't be able to, but it's good to know that everyone's participating along. So here, let me just go over the solution. Here is but one solution, I should probably tell you. Notice that the code is much shorter than the one you probably originally wrote. And this is the primary usage of why you would use loops, is in order for concisity. It doesn't make sense for a computer programmer to just copy and paste and repeat the same code 50 times over. That would get kind of messy and hard to read, as people can't really tell, after a couple of times of copy and pasting, how many different iterations there are, and it kind of just all blends together. So notice how this is much shorter than your original program. And as I've hinted, there are actually many ways you could have achieved this. And this is just one way. You can adjust the I where another variable is incremented. And then how this is useful is that changing just one variable actually lets you change how the robot moves. So instead of like copy and pasting the thing a bajillion times, you could instead just change a couple of variables and then have it repeat that amount of loops. So I'll just go and let you take a look at these solutions a bit more. As you can see, things are different here, is that this one starts at I equals to 4, and then while it's above 0, it instantly iterates downwards. And then this one, basically, it starts at 0. As long as it's below 8, it keeps iterating by 2, which you can achieve. Oh, by the way, I do realize, though, that there's a plus plus and minus minus. those hints only work. Those are the only types of abbreviated equations. All the other ones, it needs to be it needs to be the variable equals to the variable plus or minus however many you want, or divided or multiplied. Plus, plus, minus, minus are the only shorthand. Well, there may actually be other shorthands, but those are the only common shorthands I know. There are not really any other major shorthands. So during your code, you can also use the variable that you defined within it. So you know how you define the variable initially in the first step, and then condition, and then how much you're iterating by after the condition has been proven and after the body of the code has been run. Well, you can actually use that variable inside the code. So you can try this out to see what happens. Basically, the loop variable is used to alter behavior. So what happens, at least what you should be happening is that it should basically set the power, and then afterwards it should sleep by however much the loop variable is, and then afterwards it then turns. But you'll basically see a spiraling effect where the amount of time it sleeps by slowly decreases every single time, while it just turns right every single. I think this should turn. Let's see here. If power goes to the left wheel and afterwards right to the right. It should turn, yeah, it turns right. So, and then after it turns right every single time, it should make an increasingly smaller and smaller spiral shape. So you can see this here. So moving on to next loop. By the way, does anyone have any lingering questions about if loops, if statements? No, not if statements. Call it for loops. Escapes my mind. If anyone has any lingering questions, put them in the chat and I can answer them. But again, we're kind of running over time enough as is, and well, I wanted to be sure you have enough time. So just this bit will be a bit shortened, but here's the explanation of a while loop. Basically, a while loop will have a while statement, and then we'll have a condition. And then basically, as long as the condition is true, then it will keep on repeating and repeating and repeating until the condition is no longer true, in which it'll stop repeating. If the condition is not true at the beginning of the loop, then it'll just not run to begin with. So then afterwards, the body of the loop, this is what we'll repeat. I already hinted to, this while statement can be converted into a for loop with relative ease. The important thing you should notice, though, is that you should always be sure that the while loop in the condition, at some point, the condition will be set to false within the while loop. Otherwise, the while loop will just run forever, and nobody wants their code to run forever because that just creates a lot of errors and doesn't allow the rest of their code to work. As I previously hinted to, you can convert a while loop. Oh, wait, no, I already mentioned that. What else? Alrighty, so let me just go on to some examples. So here are some examples of using a while loop. They're often used with sensors because it's instead of saying these are used to just constantly check for something. So using the break statement, which I'm not sure why it didn't work earlier for your code, because I just don't know why it didn't work. Statements can this can terminate the loop, and then break statements work for loops and while loops. Here, as you can see, this is basically while it's not read, it just keeps on running the code until it is read, in which case this replaces false, and then after it just stops moving. This is just this is basically while something is active, you just repeatedly keep on collecting data, and then afterwards, if you see red, you just simply stop collecting the data. This is the last, well, there is another slide after, but this is pretty much the last slide of the PowerPoint. So let's see if you can come up with some examples of when you would use a while loop and when you would use a for loop, now that I've explained this. Just think of some real life examples that you can use. Or maybe robotics, or any other situation you can imagine. But don't be shy now. while I watch movie, I usually when the movie ends, I don't eat as much food. Good example. Yes. Anyone else think of some examples? When drawing 5 circles, use 4 loops. Yes. Good. Smoothly getting it. So, previously alluded to, this is the last slide. Feel free to leave now. If you have any questions about if statements or for loops, post them in the chat and I can answer them. Or if you have any inquiries, or if you have any additional questions, or if you have any observations, post them in the chat. But you're free to leave now. And also, I should probably thank you for joining this meeting, and thank you for listening along as I ramble on for this lesson. Oh, bye then. Yep. If anyone has any questions, you can stay behind and ask. Just go give it 2 minutes. So I'll be staying around until 2:10. In which case, if there are just no questions presented, I'll just end the meeting, I suppose. It's 12:10. Well, as no one else is asking any questions, thank you for joining the meeting. Enjoy the rest of your day. Let's see here. How do I stop the screen sharing? Again, thank you for attending.